Here we are on the final day here in Kansas City. I'll be loading this up on a trailer tonight and driving back tomorrow. We're gonna finish up this B-pillar today. Just feeling along here on this seam. I need to do quite a bit of hammer and dolly work in some of these areas just to make it lay flat. You want these welds as nice as they can be. Just trying to keep that even. You can see I've got a few little dimples here and there. I'll take care of those. We'll just slowly hammer them back and forth until they get straighter. It's a slow process, guys. A little bit of this lip is long, so let's just clean that up. Starting to look like that factory edge, just super skinny through here. Up at the top here, I just kind of ground it so that it starts to fade into this line. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of lead in here, so my suspicion is that's how they built out this edge. Basically where my panel is lines up with this vertical spot, and I think they just blended all this in at the factory. I've been hammering and dollying on these, and it's super tedious. It's hard to show on camera how long this really takes. When you get into the flow of the body, I feel like it's really important to spend the time, hammer the welds, hammer the sheet metal, get everything lined up as good as you can. It's never going to be perfect. Even the coach builders will tell you they weld things and then they V in a little bit. You know, they have to hammer them back, and then they weld some more and they hammer them back, and you're just trying to give it a fighting chance, you know. I'm trying to use just the minimum amount of filler on this car. I want the metal to be sweet, and it's somewhat because I want the car to be sweet, but somewhat because I want, you know, the personal satisfaction. We've got to weld every inch to half inch. We'll put four tacks, blow it off, we'll move. I might wind up doing 3 because this metal is really thin. It just feels thin to me. 18 gauge, no problem. This feels more like 20. We'll give us a little extra light. I got a headlamp on here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it really helps. these welds aren't perfect. These are kind of difficult sometimes, even with a MIG gun. You know, you point it, the wire doesn't hit exactly where you want it. You know, there's a nice set of 4 there, but sometimes they get sloppy. Sometimes you blow a hole. Sometimes the weld comes out and back at you. And the thing I would say is don't get greedy. If you have a weld come at you somewhere in the middle, grind it down, just make it smooth so that it doesn't get in your way on the next run. And I try and put the tacks about 3 to 4 welds apart. 1, 2, 3. And then I generally grind down the first set of tacks just so I can watch the panel move as I'm welding. You know, zip, zip, zip. Sometimes on that third one, you'll see the 2 pieces move a little bit like that. Just stop. Don't get greedy. Just stop. Because it will take you so much longer to grind these down and body work them if they're not right. That pause, zip, zip, pause, hammer, hammer, hammer is way, way, way faster than grind a hole through, re-weld the hole, grind it again, body work it, all that stuff. So take your time, don't be greedy. The other pro tip here, pay very close attention. If you're welding a vertical seam, weld up the seam, don't weld down the seam. I don't know what the difference is, but the welds always stack much better when you go zip, zip, zip. When I'm pulling the trigger, some people make a circle, some people just leave it there. I zap it and then I pull up just a millimeter so that my welds are just slightly oblong. And I find that keeps the welds just a little bit flatter when you do that. So it puts the heat in and then it starts to pull it up. Can you guys even see what I'm doing? I cut this back apart and worked this metal over pretty good. Just trying to get it. I didn't like the way it was flowing from panel to panel. It was pooched out here just a little bit. So cut it apart, hammered it from the front and from the back. I think it's flowing a lot better now. I've been using these. I've got 4 of these batteries and I've got 2 of these grinders. One I keep a flap disc on, the other I keep a cutting disc on. I prefer the 80 grit, I think that's what this is, yeah, 60 grit flap disc to take down welds because it does it nice and slow, and you can ruin a weld by grinding it just because of all the heat that goes in. So these keep it a little bit cooler. And I've got 4 of these batteries, so I can have a battery on each of them and then a backup for each of them. But what happens is you get your air hose, you get your ground cable, you get your welding torch, and then you have 3 or 4 plugins and you're like juggling them, and then they just all turn into this rat's nest. So this lets me just have the torch in the air kind of in my hands there, and then the ground clamp to the car somewhere. But then I like to come in and use, this is the 80 grit on a little wheel on a 3-inch like this, and clean off everything just to make sure all the tops are gone. Again, you're just trying to not be aggressive. That's why we use that. And then the last is a DA. I go over the whole thing with a DA, and that lets me know for sure what's good and bad. Now I know I've got to hammer that seam through there, got to hammer a little bit in there, and just a little bit upstairs here. But man, I couldn't be happier with this panel. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's looking pretty sweet. The gap looks great. There's going to be a little bit of work here up at the top, but I think even from the factory, I think they did that. So you can't get down on yourself when the factory did it worse than you can do it. So I think we need to turn our attention to laying waste to this fender and that fender there. We were able to patch up the front footwell, remove both of the front fenders. We came through and did this B-pillar. We did a ton of work in here fitting and making all of these bits and bobs right. Replaced this intersection of the longitudinal, made a couple rear suspension arms, got those welded in. Had some pipe fabricated somewheres around here. Did a little bit more straightening on the door. I don't know if you guys caught that early on, but there was a big bubble here in this door, so got it a little bit closer to where it was supposed to go. Removed the rockers here, did some investigation in here on these closing panels. And then last but not least, the frame roller here, or the car roller. My first act was getting this thing together and working and fitting. So I think that's all we're gonna do while I'm here in Kansas City. It's ready to be strapped together and strapped down to the trailer, hitched to the truck, and make the long trip back west to Colorado. The 356 is loaded up. I want to thank everybody for hanging out these last few days for me, weeks for you probably, working on the 356. We'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.